And with DBJ, I am your host, DBJ, and today is the day of air, of elemental air. Yeah, we're going to go through all the four classic elements and maybe even get a little bit deeper into them as we go forward in other weeks. But today we're going to talk about this, and of course, we're going to continue our discussion because some things came to mind from yesterday, talking about elemental earth and come up with some great ideas. But of course, before we get into that, let's get our minds started. Let's top off on our mental fuel, as it would be. So let's hit the intro, and then when we come back, let's talk about it. So, yeah, I like that little comment there from our co-host here. The N King says, "Elemental air, this will be a breeze." Oh, wait a minute, what do I have in the background? We can't have plants and things from elemental earth. Let's get some bubbles up in here. So elemental plane of air. Okay, so as we know, this day of series, maybe we could come up with a number of reasons why this would be. Maybe the classic elements and things that make up the prime material plane on this day, the barriers between the elements becomes thinner. Today being air, or the community or the nation or whatever is giving thanks that the or appeasing the elements that they don't ravage society over the next generation or over the next year or something of that nature. Or maybe it's just a tradition, the circle of druids or whatever that live high in the mountains. Or hell, there could even be a portion of the society where if you go high enough, you can literally step off with your tippy toes and float into the air. Or maybe there are airships in your world, and once a year people give thanks that there isn't a Hindenburg style dramatic event that has happened, much like sailors thanking Neptune for or appeasing Neptune, and like, let's have a great travel. Maybe this may be another thing that flying and being in the air is a normal part of society. Floating cities and islands and the whole nine yards, airships and such. But whatever the case may be, elemental air is one of these things that, like Earth, it's not necessarily related to, we don't need to let it be related to our atmosphere. It can be something arcane unto itself. And I think sometimes, like being underground and in subterranean realms, sometimes we don't like the um we think of clouds and blue skies, but it doesn't need to be that way. And even if it is clouds and blue skies, maybe we can get a little bit deeper. So, you guys know I love the environment. And let's not forget about jet streams and storms and tornadoes, hurricanes, hail, rain, and that kind of thing, in the elemental plane of air. And of course, if it's elemental plane of air, the deeper you go into it, as opposed to being on the outskirts, there won't be earth or heat from fire or even water, meaning like hail and rain and things of that nature, as you get in deeper. But the question does remain, like, as was mentioned, is there a down in the elemental plane of air, or does it just feel like you're falling but you just never hit anything, right? Like if you were to jump out of an airship in the elemental plane of air, would you just spin randomly in the air and just get blown away, or would you ultimately, depending on where you're at in the elemental plane of air, get drawn towards, air quotes, the earth, or the elemental plane of earth as you get closer? And without fire, would it just be freezing? Hmm. I didn't really thought about that. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Red Dice is like, yeah, gotta love an airship. I love the Eberron ones powered by bound elementals, and that might be a reason for having a day of uh, festivity, a tradition, because if you're going to bound elementals, and if elementals are the, if you think of them as the pets and mounts and labor animals of the prime material plane, then the elementals, you don't want them getting all upset about being inside of an airship, unless of course they kind of love it. Hey, yeah, I see what you're saying. Um, yeah, the day of elemental air might also be tornado season. Yeah, air deciding to violently rip apart everything you've built. I think not having this is also a great time to for humanity, player characters specifically, to look upon the elements and go, I didn't realize they had different factions. Like, there may be a faction that is peaceful and calm, puffy little clouds, soft breezes in the air, calm and meditative. Whereas you might have more violent ones that are filled with ozone and electricity and violent tornadoes and dark clouds, and they just like they're just like pissed off, or it just could be personality driven as well. um, some that are into the, we don't want to get pushed around by the other elements and things like that. They're blowing out fires. Their winds are so harsh that they're cutting through stone, and they're like, you're not going to push us around and use us anymore. I don't know. Who will become the heir of air on the day of air, and will they have great hair? Yeah, yeah, which would be pretty silly. Or it might not be silly at all. Maybe it's kind of fun. Like the maybe there is uh, a I don't know. It's considered to be a form of honor to have this breeze behind one, like maybe someone in uh, nobility or merchants or travelers who dare to ply the skies or something like that. Maybe they're uh, I dare say a gift given to them is a soft breeze filled with the sense of jasmine or something like that coming behind them, and everyone's like, "Ooh, oh, um, they went on a great travel or something to the nine layers of air or something." Or maybe, ooh, it could be a challenge since so few beings in their airships can go so far. Maybe there is a challenge of like of the tornado king and the I don't know. I'm trying to think of uh different thrones of sorts when it comes to air, and maybe being able to find like specific jet streams that can get an airship to a distant land is a challenge unto itself. And the people that the air elementals and whatnot, or the people that live there up in the air, like, you found the place, like the highway. Okay, yep. Yeah, the Ant King says it would be absolutely freezing, the wind chill. I'm feeling you there. Would an air elemental with freezing be the equivalent of like a basilisk or a Medusa, but air driven? Hmm. So Shai Squad says, spin randomly. Good question. The book says that down is subjective on the plane of air. Whatever direction you're thinking is down, down is down. Ooh. Well, there's an issue. Although consciously, if you could overcome your fear of like falling, consciously would be a thing. Um, how would you guys mechanically do skydiving, right? Like the ability to control yourself in the air. And how would you even train for that if you're in a medieval world? I don't know. Yeah, Deadman says there's a para-elemental plane of ice between the plane of air and water. Of course, and there's para-elemental plane para-elemental and quasi-elemental planes between every one that they touch. Like there's not a specific dividing line. So as air approaches fire, I believe that's smoke. When air approaches earth, I believe that becomes dust. And then as air approaches water, it becomes ice. So yeah, absolutely. Oh no, no, no. Yeah. Faction war on air. The blood war spills over into the elements. That may be a thing, right? Like for example, it may come across as the peaceful ones in the plane of air may come across as kind of like pansy, like, oh, you guys aren't, you're not down for the real fight. But maybe in an instant they could make a storm or whatever just instantly dissipate, like torrential storms and hurricanes. Like here in the states, we have literally a tornado alley. We see it comes off the coast of Africa, sweeps across the Atlantic, um, uh, confronts the Caribbean islands, and then heads up north during the jet streams, and then it combines with the jet streams coming down from the. It comes up from the south, and then jet streams from the north combine together. It makes this tornado alley. Something similar could exist in a fantasy realm where, like this day of this could be the beginning of the season where the great winds blow, and it may be great for airship travel. Like New Mexico, Arizona is known for its thermals for balloons. So it could be that this is the time, like, hey, if we really want to get over those barrier peak mountains, because our airships can never get that high, it's got to be today. Today and for the next 2 months is the time that we go, right? Druden says, game mechanics for skydiving? Nah, give me mechanisms for how cool my hair looks in the wind. Yeah, little performance, add a little gel. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you can tell, like when they film television and movies, whether they've actually considered they're filming it outside and the wind kicks up. It's like maybe the actor should turn just a little bit slightly because the wind will just blow their hair across their face, and they're constantly like doing the hair back over the ear thing. Or then there's other ones where you could tell that they have a fan in their face to make them look good, right? Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. As long as the air elementals are not due to breaking wind. Now, this came about because the movie Elemental, the Disney movie, came out about called Elemental, and the big city, the Chicago, New York of this um, animated realm was where Earth, Air, Fire, and Water kind of get together and have to live in a community. And there's some pretty slick stuff. I got to give Pixar their credit with some pretty slick stuff. For example, they had airships, and the air people, who were just little puff clouds with shirts on, um, were exiting the airship, and the airship was deflating, and moved down to a different level, and the people that were leaving the city, the air people went into the airship and made it puff up, and it sailed away. And I was like, that's kind of cute. That's really cute. Having the air people themselves, like, that's where they're passengers, but they literally ride in the airship, part of it. And I know in fantasy, like, we love airships, and then we basically say, oh, it's a sailing ship, but it just flies. But if we're talking about solid frame, lighter than air things like dirigibles, or the flexible ones, which are balloons, I think that's the difference between the two. Air elementals consciously going like, oh, no, we'll get inside and lift you guys up because we plan on going there as well. And there could be some kind of like allies and whatnot. um, we were talking about the impossibility of humans being able to survive on a plane of Earth, because the deeper you go, there is no air, there isn't any warmth, there isn't any liquid to be found in the plane of air. We may need to have an ally, like an air bubble of sorts, whether it's a animal intelligence maybe it's an object like an air bubble, or a animal intelligence air elemental that follows the PCs around so that they can kind of they have a place to air quotes stand on, so they're not constantly falling. And again, with the day of, maybe there's a time limit. Like, listen, the storm giants that live there, and the other reskinned, repurposed, reused air elemental ish beings that we've created for this world are looking at the PCs like, all right, we'll give you access, but don't, if you treat it wrong, that air elemental could just go and let you fall forever, spinning in the air, which could be a mission unto itself. If something, if there is no down in the elemental plane of air, then the MacGuffin, the person, the place, the thing, might be moving around chaotically forever in the elemental plane of air, which would be kind of interesting to find a place that you can't map at all. That'd be cool. Consciously, if you could overcome your fear, you mean like you could train yourself to float in air by overcoming your fear? I like that. As a matter of fact, you could even, I don't know, if you wanted to mechanically, I mean, D20, you can attach it to any, one or more of your six basic stats, and there's some skills that's attached to it. You could do it numerically, like, hey, you have as many points as the level of your character. So if you're seventh level characters, your experience, hey, you're going to be in a violent storm, tick 1 point off to survive the storm. But when you get down to very few points, or no points at all, your fear takes over. You've pushed yourself to your limit, and until you're able to rest or something and you get D4 points back, you're just going to be floating around and falling wherever, which might be, I could see a dungeon in the elemental plane of air by what the player characters perceive as being randomly dumped into different places. So on a borderlands, there would be land that the PCs could walk on. There may be structures that are there. There may be random solid objects, castles, land, airships, and things like that that are moving chaotically in an elemental plane of air. And the people who have adapted to this place, let's go with our goblinoids, right? They may have adapted themselves to live in this place, and they've got like squirrel suits, flying through the air, or there are winged creatures. Gargoyles kind of fill a little spot in that because they're kind of both earth and air, and maybe there's a clan or biological reason that the gargoyles travel between the two, or maybe there's something gargoyle like that combines two different elements together that is sentient, and the PCs can kind of say, "Hey, can you take us to this place?" And those things are, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah." Yeah. All right. Where did I hear that from? It's like, yeah, flying is easy. Just fall down, but miss the ground. Yeah. Which maybe there's a faction. You know I would be, I'd have my lemonade pants on up front and chocolate pants in the back, falling in a plane of air. But that being the case, maybe there are elemental factions. It's like, yeah, human beings, you need to let it go. I know you want to stand on the ground, and I know you're scared to fall. But if you let yourself go, your unconsciousness will take you where you need to go, right? Yeah, I want to talk about D&D airships and how much they suck. You think? I don't think that. Maybe the game mechanics suck since they didn't give us any for Spelljammer, which is really weird. Like, really? Because you could just reskin the same. Anyway, that's my own problem with that. I don't know if they suck so much. I like a lot of the artwork. That, I mean, heck, we could find. Let me see. Let's see if we could find some. Let's see, fantasy airships. Let's oops, and let's get some images up here. See what we got. Because I love the ones with like sails that are on the sides and on the bottoms and such. So let's share this out here. It's weird how I can't grab my own. I have to switch back and forth between the thing, but maybe it's just because I'm a Luddite. Here, let's do that. Let me shove myself down to the bottom here. Um, let it. Drew's like, let it go. Be careful. I will start singing the song from Frozen. Yeah, yeah. But maybe there is a type of thing like, hey, having to let it go. And in the Disney movie Elemental, they had a sporting event that where their names had a colloquialisms for letting out some air out of the human sphincter. So it was pretty silly. It was pretty silly, um, but pretty funny as well. And also the three dimensionality of the elemental plane of air. We all know that it's very difficult to do that uh, when you have like a battle map and things like that. But I still think it would be really cool though. Shy Squads, yes, it has to do with shoehorning technology into a fantasy world. Oh, yes, airships are cool. Fucking other contexts. I get it. I get it. Yeah, I mean, if you're someone who doesn't like firearms, the anti-firearm armistices of the people who like fantasy sometimes they're just like technology airships gear and war forged and things like that. Some people hate that in their fantasy. I don't have a problem with that. And some of this is a little bit like just looking at some of these images. I can imagine some of these look a little bit like diesel tech or diesel punk or whatever. I'm looking at this one, little, look, it looks like there's like an antenna at the top and things like that. But what is this from? Final Fantasy vehicles. There we go. And some of these airships are actually, I would say, more like islands. After, if in depending on what kind of fantasy you're looking at, some of them can be like more like islands. Um, oh, that's one with a ring of fire around it, maybe for propulsion. And then we've got propellers and things of that nature. I don't know. Anyway, I like the idea of traveling that in that manner, simply because once you give, first of all, if you give a player an airship, the players an airship, they're going to want to like outfit the hell out of it, right? Armor, weapons, speed, other magical things, being able to camouflage themselves in like a cloud of a puff cloud or smoke or something of that nature. But it also gives you a great excuse for why players can't get somewhere. We talked about this before that if you give a player the Millennium Falcon, it's going to have its warp drive fail at some point, and the same thing for characters, right? There's another vector of a challenge for the players. They may need to have fuel, air, staff. Mutinies could happen, damage to the ship, and having to have it fixed, and the horrors of being stuck in a storm or having if it's a balloon or whatever thing allows it to float. Hey, there's five, I don't know, flotation gems that must be rejuvenated by the when you get to the next area and there's a, I don't know, sages or council members or merchants or something that can empower, three of your failing or draining five gemstones or something that allow it to fly or something like that. So you always have to have fuel, navigation, um, those issues when having a vehicle, and which I kind of like it. I kind of like the idea of giving the players a problem that they're going to love to have and keep around with them. Thomas Anderson says have to go the air elemental plane to the air elemental plane to harvest trees that grow there. To build the ships that float in the air, as their wood is lighter than air, so it can float. The leaves and such could be the plants that grow. Maybe, of course, it's a proximity to the plane of Earth. There would be floating rock, and maybe that soil grows plants with the wood. And so, in order to harvest the wood, you have to get there and then get it back. And so that's why the wood itself floats. Hell yeah, Hell yeah! And then you also need someone who is a Wainwright, an individual who knows how to build ships, but build them for the plane of air. So that as well, the player. What a great gift for the players to a reward or something for the players to get there. Maybe there's an individual and their family was kidnapped by storm riders or something, and they're like, "Well, I'll build you a ship, but you need to get my family back first." And the PCs are like, "Okay, all right, let's go on this adventure. How do we find them?" You know, and the storm riders are like, I don't know, there's some kind of weird stormy jet streamish kind of thing. Shai says, remember, technological development slows way down whenever there's magic. To paraphrase Andrew Wood, they wouldn't get nearly far enough to develop airships if there are fly spells around. Not necessarily. Also, it's lowest common denominator stuff, right? To learn the fly spell, how long does it take? You know, if it takes 8 years to learn the fly spell and 3 months to build an airship, people would be building airships because of the ease at which you're able to do a thing. It's like um, training samurai and knights in use of swords and lances and things like that is great, but you're more effective just giving people spears, your average person a spear, and teaching them how to use a crossbow or an arrow, you know, or javelins, and go, like, here, stand on the front lines, right? So I don't think one is necessarily um, automatic. We do have nuclear energy, but we don't use it commonly because the difficulty of using it. We pretty much go like, listen, we got a thing that's flammable. Let's use some gasoline, right? Red Dice says there's a fate supplement where there are trees that get lighter as they age, eventually uprooting themselves and floating into the air. People harvest the skywood to make various technologies. So yeah, that's a good idea too, right? Maybe harvesting the tree before it gets out of it floats away too far. Um, that would be a great adventure, like wilderness adventure, and you find out that the trees um, the treants will ascend into the sky. And who's to say that? I mean, if the actual clouds in the sky above the mountains is how you get to the plane of air, really haven't discussed that, but I could see that being a thing as well. Find the highest mountain peak, stand upon that peak, and it's literally a point in the air. Balance your toes on the top of it and just push off, and there you go. Dilithium crystals going full Star Trek with your airships. Yeah, yeah, true. I love that one as well. Yep. Yeah, of course you have to have the dilithium crystals. What do they look like? Where do you find them? Shrug. It's a MacGuffin, right? The trees are air. Yeah, air trees. Got it. You just unsucked D&D airships and created a great MacGuffin. Yep. Yeah, I mean, why not? Why not? And if there's damage to a ship, maybe it's not easy to repair it. A perfect reason for why the players need to have downtime for a week, you know, while they adventure in a place that's got lost in the elemental plane of air. Yeah, trees are air. Yeah, does give you all sorts of potential stories. How many times did they have trouble with dilithium in Star Trek? Right? Exactly, exactly. And you could play with we could play with the realities and fantasies of air as well. Like, what would an air dungeon look like? Would it just be player characters floating through? Would there be hallways of clarity with walls of thick clouds that only by pushing through them could you get to another room, like a literal like three-dimensional dungeon? Or would there be things lost, sucked into, or maybe even stolen into the elemental plane of air, like that castle with things randomly floating in? And could you have dangers like, oh, we found a castle on a floating island, but there's a good chance the furniture in the room will randomly start to lift up into the air and like bounce against the walls or things like that. I don't know. There we go. TA says could be too that the air would be resistant to fire or even fireproof, but would be susceptible to water. So if you hit it with bags of water, it soaks into the wood, causing it to sink. which might be a way of navigating the plane of air. So, like instead of north, south, east, west, you'd have to have an XYZ axis, and then each point on that XYZ axis would point towards one would point towards earth, another towards fire, another towards water, maybe one pointing towards the positive material plane, one to the negative material plane, or something like that. And the the ships move based on I'm trying to find the words to explain placing more of that element on that direction, causing it to move in that direction. But I don't. How would you add rocks and earth and then remove the rock? I don't know. I'm thinking something like that. Yeah, red red dice. Um, JAL says, I imagine druids would be pretty valuable on a Skyward ship. That would be awesome. Although, what would air druids be like? Like, would an air druid, the ascension of an air druid, we could reskin ghosts and banshees, um, corporeal adversaries as the ascension of druids of air, so that um, the storm druids that we have on the prime material plane, they can ascend to or want to talk to the druids that come down from the sky, but they also allow um, they allow passage or are guides into this realm of the air, which would be kind of cool. And maybe temporarily, like they the druids come down from the sky to give the PCs something, and there's nothing in their hand. They're like, "This is for you, and this is for you." And they're like, "I don't feel anything." And like, "Oh no, no, there's a bubble against you. You just don't realize it." And then they get into the elemental plane of air, and it's like, "Oh, now I see it. Hey, this is kind of cool," you know. Or maybe they give them a little small like a cloud that floats near them, like Bit from the original Tron movie, that just like instead of a bat or a frog or a flying snake or something, it's just a cloud as a familiar. Druden says the air dungeon has no rooms, but vortexes whirling all kinds of dangerous stuff around. Yeah, hey, that'd be kind of cool too. I mean, dangerous, hell of dangerous, but yeah. Um, like for example, getting caught in a vortex could just confuse a PC. Like, would that be the equivalent of falling prone in the elemental plane of air? You just get caught in a vortex, or you lose your internal gyroscope goes wild, and you just start spinning randomly until you can kind of like right right yourself in your direction, and that's falling prone. Yeah, people build raft cities that float in the sky. That'd be awesome too. Multi, and they could be connected together with like chains or hemp or rope or something. Those floating trees could be where um, uh, I'm going to call people humanity. Goblinoids, humanoids, those kind of things. Maybe they find these trees that float in the air, and the roots gather little bits of can draw in little bits of moisture that's in the air on the edges of the elemental plane, and so those trees have the wood that can be carved, fruits. They could expand out like a coral reef, but from trees, so that it's not just a single tree, but like it could be very many miles or kilometers of this rooted appendage that floats, that has woven itself together and floated, because the earth, think about it, gravity in earth actually limits, it controls our height and shape and things of that nature. But if there's no gravity, these trees could become quite massive. Things floating out there could be very massive. And like Deadman says, people building raft cities could be made of such a thing. Building, large enough to have massive communities and farming. Um, what are those? There's plants that live off of air that you can have. Like you can literally put them, hang them on strings and such. So yeah, I love it. Maybe in the style of Fremen, spitting as a mark of respect sharing their water. Perhaps an air druid breathes on someone as a sign of respect, sharing their air. I love that. And it could be like like the Fremen spitting on the ground. It could be a little bit disconcerting when these strangers come up to you and breathe on your face or on your neck or something or in your ear, and you're like, get off of me, and then you're like, oh, I get it. Like, make they to communicate over long distances, they kind of like form an air bubble or a cloud or something. They speak it into their hands and breathe it out, and then of course it travels around and eventually finds someone else's ear, and it blows in their ear, and that's where they hear the sound or something. Yeah, I love it. I love that idea. Although, sorry, sorry about the scatological humor here, but imagine the druids have to like break wind. They're like squeezing sphincter to to, to move different places and stuff. You're like, why does it look like you're sitting on a stool or something? And the druid's like, watch this. You take off. You're like, oops, sorry. Pinched a loaf there, kind of sharded. TA says, you have heard of Waterworld. Welcome to Air World. Hell yeah. Hell's yes. Maybe again, well, I could see air deteriorating lots of things because of the wind, but maybe with the lack of earth and fire and water, maybe they're like ancient airships, or islands or things that have fallen or got sucked into the elemental plane of air that the player characters can find. And like, uh, what would the undead look like in the elemental plane of air? Would there just be skeletons and zombies just randomly trying to grab for stuff? It falls like snow onto airships. The undead are like, oh, I'm standing on something. Brains. That would be kind of weird too. I love it. Yeah, a dungeon with vortices instead of walls would be awesome. But where does the vortex stop? How can there be an edge of a vortex? Well, I could see there being a very straight. I mean, like a wall of air. Um, you put your hand towards it, and you could feel the kinetic energy of the spinning of the air. So I don't know. Maybe every dungeon is a vortex that's a spiral. I've probably mentioned it before that I live in Berlin, Germany, and on souvenir, people take home when Visitic is indeed a bottle of Berlin's air. Wait, oh, so you can buy a souvenir bottle of air in Berlin? Is that what you're saying? I can't say that's too odd because people buy souvenirs of sand, I guess, when they go to the Caribbean. So, hmm. Uh, either that, Red Dice says, either that or flying blind on a rocket cycle like Flash Gordon. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The old black and white Flash Gordon shows, they would literally just put on a cloak and jump out of the ships and float in the air. So, yeah, it could be the elemental plane of air could be the equivalent of the vacuum of space for us today. Like, yes, you can breathe it. Yes, you can navigate it, but you can still, but there's light coming from somewhere. You know, maybe there is no sun, but there's just random light, or maybe there is a sun coming. The sun is the elemental plane of fire that can be seen from a distance, and then the moon, there's a moon or a planet which is the elemental plane of earth seen from another distance or something. I don't know. um, the game Dauntless is a form of air world, a bunch of giant floating rock islands inhabited by behemoths that humans hunt. Ooh, we always have to have that kind of thing. Let's take a, okay, we got airships here. Let's look up fantasy fan to see floating islands and clouds. Oop, clowns, duh. All right, here we go. We've got some, and let's expand this out here. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Let us share the gift of the sacred guff. Ha, two things now that remind me of Doctor Who, the aliens that communicated through farts. Yep. Sleuthine. I don't know anything. My geek cred is terrible. I've got to improve that. Yeah, Air World, where instead of global warming, soil erosion rubbed the world away. That would be really weird, right? Like the denizens of the plane of Earth never knew. They remember a time where there was land beneath their feet, but it no longer exists, and we've been traveling the airways trying to find earth and ground to place our feet upon it. That's funny. I love that. I love that. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Talking about Doctor Who, way before the modern Doctor Who episodes start up in the 2000s. Okay. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, Deadman says, or buying a vial of red dirt when visiting Colorado. Yep. I think there's a Barbados has like pink sand, and then in the Mediterranean, what's there's a place with black sand as well, like volcanic black sand. Is it the Mediterranean? I can't remember. Anyway, but yeah, yeah, yeah. Which in a fantasy realm, there could be a bottle of air. You know, that everyone thinks there's a person selling magical concoctions and such, and on the shelf is a bottle of air, and everyone's just like looks at it like, yeah, right, like I'm not spending 50 gold pieces for a bottle of air, and they're like, oh no, it's real air. And everyone passes it by until a PC is like, I'll buy the bottle of air. And you're like, be careful when you unstop it because there's a lot of air in that bottle. And then they open it up and it takes them to, it's like a big storm comes out of it and it sweeps the PCs up, snatches them away. That'd be kind of silly and fun too. Yeah. I think back then it was not known for playing the bean though. You guys are silly. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, you guys have lost me about this Doctor Who talking. Song. Yes, it is based on a song about Berlin's air, which was very popular during the Cold War, since the air could be seen as a symbol of liberty. Ooh, ooh. There's something. So okay. Anyway, TA says Hawaii has black sand beaches, and people are stealing it all the time, even though it's not legal to do so. Yeah, because of the volcanic. It's the volcanic soil, and then it gets beat by the ocean waves, and then turned into the black carbonated soil turns soft, gets eroded away. Yep, even though the song is older than the Cold War. I wonder if the plane of air has a lot to do with sound and sound and vibration as well. Um, Songs, bards, entertainment, voices, language may be a big thing on the plane of air as well, just because of expelling it out of the lungs in a certain vibration may cause certain things to be drawn to or scared of or be so for example, harpies, sirens, again, bards, creatures with thunder damage that cause loud sounds, or anything that causes force damage, which might be related to. We're talking about D20 games, or at least fifth edition, that causes force damage or bludgeoning damage, might be very common in the plane of air as a damage result or damage source. So, for example, you there are air banshees and air uh, shadows or air ghosts or something. You've renamed them. Yeah, Dead Man says black sand can be found all around the world. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with uh, geological formations, dead volcanoes, current active volcanoes, or maybe some kind of other geological thing like obsidian or onyx being ground down to powder could also be a reason. But I'm imagining also, yes, like Drew says, sonic damage or thunder damage, not force damage. I'm thinking of like being a cow being picked up by a hurricane and tossed. So like, or air pressure, bomb goes off, and the pressure wave that moves before it, like a vacuum may be a thing as well. Airlessness in an air filled realm. So a kind of attack could be creating a vacuum that pushes things out and then gets sucked back in as well. That's where my idea of force is coming from. But plenty of sonic thunder damage, and maybe not in the way that we think of. Like, for example, high pitched noises, loud, extremely loud noises, pockets of complete silence as well. Could be a natural part of the plane of air. It could be like deafening noises. The wind is so powerful that you can't even hear your own self speak, and so being able to communicate that way, or there, again, for the purposes of the people that live there, maybe there are specific tools, horns or air instruments or something like that that can carry a note or a tone extremely far. So much like sharks can smell blood in the water, maybe there's like air boules that float through the sky, or the equivalent of purple worms or something, that are drawn by air vibrations, whether they are noises or sounds, or the sounds of conflict or songs, or that thunder wave spell that people were like, I'm seventh level, I'll never use that again, might be very important to use as like a calling card, or to move a vehicle or something like that. Yeah, TA says, speaking of vibrations and such, cats' purring frequency is known scientifically to cause bones to grow more dense and may have other healing properties too. That may be a thing. That's an awesome idea. Um, Maybe there are creatures here that can send vibrations through the body to detect things within the human body, or maybe even detect shape changers, or something like that. I don't know. Red Dice says, I wonder how far you can see in the plane of air if there's minimal atmospheric distortion and relatively little solid matter to impede your view. Uh, Not sure. I mean, cloud formations are technically moisture, so the the further you go towards the inner portion, the less clouds there may be. So the clouds would probably impede your vision, but as long as they're very many, if they're hundreds of kilometers away and there's no distortion, you could probably see pretty far. You may not be able to get details, but anybody with a very high perception rate might be like, it may be extremely difficult to sneak up on someone if you're not using some kind of camouflage, like clouds or things like that. But like I was mentioning before, being close to the other elements, thinking of humanoids standing on Earth, fire may be another thing as well, creating all kinds of or dust, earth and air, dust, smoke, huge city-sized or even nation-sized plumes of smoke if you get close to the plane of fire. The most deadly predator of the guffalo. Guffalo? No. Maybe there's a limbless, uh, aquatic creatures given air-like status, floating status in the plane of air, where we could take all of our aquatic creatures and just take their limbs off or whatever. So maybe there's like a aerial gorgon that breathes out breathes stuff out of its rear end. You don't want to get caught in that. Yeah, as long as you do not use the sonic weapons from the old Dune movie. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 I, oh, what were they called? You'd speak into them. They carried them around their necks. So you'd speak into them, and you shot, and all of a sudden it would just send out a sonic wave. I love that. Scientifically, you would have to have a lot of vacuum as the air around us starts at about 1 part in 1,000 or 1 part in 999 parts vacuum, and the pressure is caused by 1 part moving 700 miles an hour. Our our scientist here is telling us how to, the basically the impossibility of creating a vacuum, except it's fantasy. So we can create as much of a vacuum as we want. Um, Although they could be enemies, a vacuum would be closer to the elemental plane of negativity, which I think today we just call the shadow plane. But back in the day, it was literally the necrotic plane. It was the plane of entropy. It was the plane. So as the plane of air gets close to that, it becomes more of a vacuum. And instead of shadows, maybe they're like vacuum creatures. I'm trying to reskin a lot of the monsters that we already have, like a cloud hydra, a monster with that has a number of heads, but if you cut the head, it just splits into two because it's just a cloud or something. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to pull stuff out of my ass. Definitely blue dragons and white dragons. And I'm trying to think of some other monsters that would be very okay. Let's see. List of monsters on the plane of air. Okay, let's see. There's a Reddit thing. Lots of flying creatures. Do we have a list? Forgotten Realms wiki, maybe. Um, that's not very many, but oh, that's a big list. Okay. Let's share this out instead. So, so their top choices here on the Forgotten Realms page. Um, the Aarakocra, of course, Jinn, Pixies, Crystal Dragons, okay, Quaddles, Emerald Dragons, Sprites, and Sylphs. And then if we go down further, we just have our A to Z list. Let's see what's cool. Yeah, aerial servants, invisible stalkers, um, air elementals, Johnny, Coatl, crystal dragons again, air dust ice mephits, of course, Jinn and Noble Jinn, Dragon Horse, Smoke Para Elemental, Spirit of the Air, Sprites, Frost Salamander because of the cold, Emerald Dragon, Vapor Rat, Windwalker, and these are the kind of things like I mean, Vapor Rat. I mean, do you really need new stats for that? No, you just you we can come up with like make a list of like uh, adjectives that describe a air like vortex, vapor, cloud, wind. Use the word air. Um, uh, Stream, something like different kinds of things like that, and then you just add that adjective onto a monster, and you're done, right? What's a vortex ogre look like? What does a uh, I don't know, a cloud orc look like? What's a vapor rat? You can come up with many kinds of things like that. Druden says, but be careful with vibrations. Certain wavelengths can also cause mental side effects, which would also be a pretty cool thing too. Again, that goes back to our harpies sirens kind of thing. Like maybe there are sound creating sound and sound waves in the elemental plane of air do not end. So if you were to scream, your voice's scream would extend out from you and just keep going for eternity from an infinite plane of air. So it could be pockets of like sound or vibrations that like don't fly through there. The airship must navigate around it because if you go through that we can feel the sound and vibrations coming from here, but if we go closer, it could confuse us or cause insanity or something like that. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Weirding modules. I like that. I like that word. Weirding modules. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe the sound can transform rather docile monsters or creatures or beasts or even humanoids and cause them to become pretty violent. Deadman says the sonic weapons from Dune were called the weirding module. I didn't realize. I couldn't remember what they were called, but I like that. I like the idea of that. I mean, stealing it from Dune and making it something else. How about the idea that the vacuum or space is a shadow cast by the ether? Ooh, ooh, I like that. The negative energy plane, our inevitable fate, embrace nothingness. You can start on air. Yeah, yeah, embrace it because everything will get sucked into the negative energy, negative plane. Yeah, if you had the negative plane below the airplane, maybe it's a huge dark vortex sucking air down into it. Ooh, ooh, I like that. That's a little bit more dynamic, right? Like it's an if you're on the plane of air and you get low enough, wherever low is, you go towards that, like I was saying, the radial six direction radial on this, maybe it is like a black vortex that just keeps sucking the plane of air down into it for eternity. Or maybe not. Maybe the plane of air will eventually disappear and get sucked into it if the PCs don't do something. Yeah, he says, "Oh man, adding air or whatever element, and you're done. Another of the cheapest aspects of any monster manual. Hell yeah, just add air to the thing. What's an air orc look like? I don't know. And like I said, you could ask, go do your thesaurusation, or ask Chat GPT. Give me 20 descriptors that represent cloud or air or something, and boom, spits it out, and you're done. Yeah. It's a nice takeaway. By the book, the energy planes are completely separated from the elemental planes, but fuck that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your idea is cooler. Too close to the negative plane, and it'll suck the air right out of your lungs. In the olden days, back in my day, the elemental plane. Let's see. ODND elemental elemental planes. Let's get some images here. And let's see if we can find. Let's share this out here. I'm going to try to find an old school map versus a new school. And the new school, it has delineations, but the old school was kind of a sphere. Let's see if I can find the sphere and then go back to its. All this is new school stuff. This is elemental chaos, elemental planes. Okay, so here we let this one has words on it. All right, so next to my head we have here the elemental chaos and the ethereal plane, and then we have all of the overlap. So if we go from left to right, we have fire, smoke, air, ice, water, ooze and earth, magma and fire, and then smoke, and then we go back to air, and we start we've made a giant circle. And then where this says elemental chaos in the ethereal plane, above with elemental chaos, that was the elemental plane of positive energy. Today, you could call it like radiance, and on the bottom you could call that uh, not necromancy, uh, necro energy, negative material plane. And so you can see air goes to vacuum, water becomes salt, earth becomes dust, and fire becomes ash as it goes into the negative material plane. So vacuum is a thing. And then elemental chaos or positive energy, air becomes lightning, water becomes steam, earth becomes mineral, and fire becomes radiance and such. So it was kind of, and these overlaps were, there wasn't a delineation. You would slowly, if you traveled in that direction, you would slowly move into those regions. And what what a great excuse for like why a thing like why is there land or earth in the elemental plane of air? Is because you're close to this one particular region, and mind you, we it's fantasy, right? Like how much space is there? Like, is it a mile, or is it like 80 kilometers, or is it infinite? Who knows? Here's another one, plane of earth, air, and let's see if we could. I know Planescape has it. Um, let's see. Shit, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Something bigger. I tried recreating the elemental planes. This is posted on Reddit, and material plane in the middle. What is that? The Shadowfell to the left, and Feywild to the right. Below the material plane, we got the Cinder Wastes, Plane of Fire, Sea of Fire, Fountains of Creation, or the Plane of Magma, and the Furnaces. We've got the Great Conflagration, or during the Plane of Ash. And then over in the Plane of Air, we have the Mistral Reaches, the Labyrinth Winds, some great names here. And then as we flow towards the Plane of Water, we have Frostel on the Plane of Ice, Sea of Ice, and things of that nature. So yeah, we come up with some. Listen, the blank of blank is a very common thing in fantasy, right? And so yeah, air orcs are two vapors. Yeah, they're not violent, but they're all, what are they? They have airs about themselves. They feel that they've risen above everyone. They have too many vapors. They don't fight you, but they just put you down. They're just like, oh, what are you? You smell material. Ugh. Hey, maybe communication happens like pheromones. So when the air orcs get upset, they smell like campfire, they smell like soil, or they smell like decomposition. But when they're happy, they smell like jasmine or French fries, or I don't know. I don't know. But it would be pretty fun that because they're from the plane of air, like they release pheromones from their body, and you could tell what they. And of course, if they get upset, like little storm clouds above their head, or like little traces of like fairy lightning, goes through their bodies or something. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, Shai says, DBJ, it's fantasy, absolutely. Yet the book emphasizes over and over that these planes are infinite, that it's a paradox. They're infinite and yet they have borders, but they're still infinite. Yes, there is a paradox on that, right? Like, oh, the plane is infinite, but it has a border, and you're like, well, that, but by that's like saying an infinite number has an end because it doesn't have an end, right? So I agree with you. I do agree with you. It does present a thing, but um, I look at it. I look at the borders like a giant portal rather than an actual border, or rather like using this image of someone who tried to create a map of the elemental planes, that the prime material plane is where, what is oh not geology, okay, so in mathematics, the prime material plane is a point, and the elemental planes are a ray that extend out infinitely. So everything that borders on the material plane has a border, but if you were to go away from it further, as in this map, like north, south, east, west, you would go on infinitely. And that's kind of how I look at it, like a ray or a cone. So the cone has a terminal end on one end, but there's an infinity on the other end. And then the borders between them stretch infinitely as a line, but not as a, it's more, I look at it like a portal of sorts. Like, oh, if you reach this place, you can cross over to the other one, but with the crossing itself is also infinite because it runs along them. So that's how I mean, that's my own mental, I don't know what you call it, mental math. I don't know if my theory is good. I just look at it. Yeah, yeah. Shai says maybe the planes are like cylinders, infinite on each end, but with borders all around the circumference. See, I like that idea too. That the, it's like an infinite cylinder, so you can get into it, but it keeps yeah, yeah. And then the top, no, well, shit. The top end, if the top end goes to energy and the bottom end goes to negativity, hmm. Drew says the number of pi is also infinite, but it still has borders to other numbers. Infinity can have borders. Yeah, it's airception. Yeah, it's planes within planes, stuff like that. Um, Also, I suppose because of before I get out of here, so I also think because of using this as a map, the borderlands are the equivalent of the planes of alignment in the sense of uh, the borderlands are the borders of conflict, right? So the plane of water is in conflict with air, and what do we have here? We've got islands, and we've got frost, and we have ice and things like that. We have ash and smoke and things, and those may be places of conflict that we love to have in our games. So the the islands that exist on the plane of air, they may be very few of them, like an asteroid belt, and the player characters, or they get there and they realize that there's conflict between the humanoids that live there because there's only so much land to be found unless that land is carved away from the plane of earth, or it falls, maybe it's in such conflict that over time things fall into the other planes without anyone's consent. It just happens. It's just the natural spinning of the world. The prime material plane keeps getting built and rebuilt because it like a Sargosa, um things fall into the prime material plane like a black hole, but it also gets shunted back out again, spun back out in its building, right? And if the prime material plane houses every single um, material plane known to every single player of every single game world, it's possible that it keeps flinging materials out. Every game world that gets destroyed, every game world that gets forgotten, gets spun back out again. So land, fire, water falls into the plane of air and then gets sucked back in again to create another material plane that comes out of our imaginations. I pulled that out of my ass, but I like it. Nice, like a flatland vibe. Yeah, 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 yeah. One-eyed heathen says, okay, prisons even fourth dimension, you can see ooh, or it could be like the prisons in my concept, where sphere to the three dimensions of perception, but if you learn to perceive in the fourth dimensional direction, you can see the doors. Ooh, I like that. When I heathen says I came in on a conversation about number theory, I'm down for it. I need to head to bed, so just listen to the rest. Not much number theory here. Well, TA and the rest of the other people are far smarter when it comes to that kind of thing. Flatland vibe, yeah. So if you travel in the three dimensions of travel, it's infinite. But if you find the fourth dimensional direction, you can then travel into one of the other planes. I like that idea as well. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense, right? Like, so if you go to the plane of air, it's air, but the fourth dimensional portion of it, you can see the doorway, the interstitial to get to the other region. I like that. I like that a lot. That way, that's a great excuse for how you can get to any random place on the plane of existence in the first place, right? Like, there is a reason how you get there. It's because the greater, more powerful beings, of course, see the fourth dimension easily, and they go back and forth. But the other things that live there, the animalistic things there, maybe they accidentally find those places, or they can see them, the migration of the boulets, the air boulets, or I don't know, the harpies or whatever, their migration, they can sense the fourth dimensional interstitials to allow them to go into the, say, the prime material plane, only to be there for a short time to then biologically float back again or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. Yeah. Here we go with our t-shirts. I took my airplane to the plane of air. The plan was plain and no pain at all. Yeah. Yeah. You should be writing rap lyrics. My concept, that is how the keys work to travel vast distances quickly. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, guys, we've gone on. I've taken far too much of your time when it comes to this kind of thing. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for being part of the show. Of course, tomorrow is the elemental plane of fire. We did talk about the day of fire before, more about an earthbound traditions and things of that nature. But we'll definitely go back into that as well, and as well as traveling the plane of fire. Again, here's another element that's like normal humans would never be able to survive here, but there is given there are there's like solid surfaces in the plane of fire, which we're like, how is that possible? But it's fantasy as well. Drew says DBJ must be from the plane of air since he is today on air, but soon he will be off air, and then we will get another element tomorrow. I will be looking forward into the fourth dimension for tomorrow, escaping that. And of course, I hope no one thinks I have airs about me as well. Uh, that's a that's an old school parental thing about a person who thinks their nose is in the air. Chai says, fire. This is going to be fun. It must be kind of like the sun when you think about it. I was wondering about that too. Is it like the sun walking on the surface of the sun, which is that the sun really doesn't have a surface? It's like just flaming gases or something. Yeah. TA says the base unit was a universe folded up into a cube, and when opened, it created a universe laying parallel to our universe. And cubes that connect to it allow opening paths between two universes. Maybe that's where the cubic gate magic item came from, way back in AD&D. There's a magic item called the cubic gate, and depending on which side of the cube you activated, sent you to a place in the great cosmos. Red Dice says, I love the idea that the harpies on the plane, prime material plane are just seasonal migrations. It could be, yeah. I mean, and maybe they're gathering food for their nests as they travel back to the plane of air. I mean, it, why the great question of why do monsters exist in the world? Seasonal migration. Why not? Why not? Yeah, walking on sunshine. We got to go out on that one. Yeah, yeah. Walking on sunshine tomorrow. Then, yeah. Ouch. Very funny. I love it. But yeah, we'll continue our discussion. I think more or less we can keep our discussion going from the days before as well. But anyway, anyone who's brand new to the channel, hope you find it. If you come this far along, please do the do. Like, share, subscribe, defeat the algo monsters if you would like to help out. Let others know about it, or just be reminded yourself that the show goes live 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here, Monday through Friday. So, guys, have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. Thank you, co-hosts, for making me look brilliant. And everyone have a great day. Peace and prosperity.